What does it take for leaders to lead God's people during a time of crisis? I think we're all aware of the challenges that we face from this coronavirus pandemic. The challenges are great, and we all are asking numerous questions. In fact, there are more questions than we actually have answers for when it comes to a well-informed basis. And certainly when we think about this pandemic, we know that COVID-19 is a reality, and the short and the long-term effects of it cannot be measured. And in the midst of all the questions that we're asking, we're wondering who it is that we should believe and what information should we believe. But ultimately, when it comes to leading God's people, we want to know what will help us. What do we need in order to lead God's people in a time of crisis? John F. Kennedy made the statement that the word crisis, when written out in Chinese characters, forms two words: danger and opportunity. And I think we're all aware of the dangers that exist, that we face when it comes to a time of crisis. But can we, will we see the opportunity that is here for us? You see, a crisis is not new to our time. Crises have existed since the very beginning. But how do we lead during that time of crisis? Because that's what makes the difference. There are a number of areas that we could discuss, and we will in time. But the foundational element that I want us to focus on, that we must have when it comes to leading during a time of crisis, is courage. It's courage. Who comes to your mind when you think about the idea of courage? Maybe you think about David and the time he fought Goliath. Maybe you think about Paul and the challenges that he faced in ministry and the difficulties that he encountered. Maybe you think about Jesus, or maybe you think of some other historical or political figure when you think of courage. And oftentimes throughout my life, I've heard this idea of courage described as a quality that we possess, or maybe even a characteristic that is developed in our life. But over the years, I've come to know that courage, while it is not the absence of fear, courage is a decision. It's a choice that is made to act with bravery when we are afraid, when we are scared out of our minds. In his book, Take the Stairs, Rory Vaden talks about leaders doing those difficult tasks. Sometimes it's doing what one does not want to do, or maybe even doing what one does not like to do. Or it's even doing what no one else is willing to do. No matter how difficult it is, we take the stairs. We do that which is difficult. And in the book, he illustrates with a situation where a woman was at a high-rise office building when a fire broke out. She was so claustrophobic, she was scared to go down the stairwell because that's where everyone was at. They were crowding to get down the stairwell and out to safety. She was too high up to jump out the window, and so what she decided to do was curl up under her desk and wait to die. Before long, a fireman came through the door and he found her, and he begins to get her out from underneath the desk, and he tries to usher her to the stairwell, but she's fighting him. She's resistant because she's scared. And the fireman whispered in her ear, "It's okay to be scared. Do it scared." And he kept whispering this to her all the way down the stairwell until they were safe. And she talked about how that it changed her life and the way that she approached everything in her life. That even though she might be uncertain or unsure, or that she might be scared, she did it anyway. We're living in a time that's very challenging. And there is no doubt that people are afraid. They're scared. And they need leaders that, even though they themselves might be scared, they do it scared because they must lead God's people. I'll never forget the first trip that I made out of the United States, and we were headed to the country of Nigeria. And through a series of mishaps, what happened through a delayed flight, we missed a flight out of Amsterdam. And so we had to spend the night there. And the next evening, we arrived in the capital city of Lagos, Nigeria. And when we exited the airport, we had no idea who was going to pick us up. And in the midst of the crowd, there were two men there holding a small piece of paper that had our names on it. And so they ushered us over to a taxi. And there we were sitting shoulder to shoulder in the backseat of that taxi. And they ushered us across town. Seemed like it took an hour to get to this hotel. And I'll never forget thinking how scared I was in that moment. I had no idea where we were, how we would get back to the airport. I didn't know the language that was spoken. And I remember the taxi driver turning around in English. He said, "Don't get out of the car." And I'm thinking, no problem. I was not about to get out of the car. And a few minutes later, they came back from the hotel and they said, "We can stay here." And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This is not the Holiday Inn Express. I mean, the hotel had no windows. It just had bars where there used to be windows. The gate out in front was 10 feet high. And I'll remember for the rest of my life laying there in that bed and thinking, where is my faith? Where is my courage? I was scared all night long. I never slept. I could hear the cars and the motorcycles going up and down the highway all night long. And I remember hearing people as they walked by talking and laughing and screaming, and the smells and everything about my senses was heightened as I remember laying there thinking, I am scared. And I remembered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And when King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, threatened them that if they did not bow down to this idol, he would throw them in the furnace of fire. And then he asked them this question, what God is there who is able to deliver you? And you'll remember their response. Our God is able to deliver us. And even if he does not, be it known to you, O king, we will not bow down to your idol. Our God is able to deliver us. No matter what the crisis, no matter how challenging the pandemic may become, no matter what we face, our God is able. And in the midst of this opportunity, we need to realize that no matter how challenging it becomes, no matter how afraid we might be, it's okay to be scared. Do it scared. What leaders must have when it comes to leading during a time of crisis or pandemic is courage. They need to make the choice to act bravely, even though they may be scared to death, because our God is able.